Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 15 of the Hockey Toolkit. I am Trevor DiCarlo.
I'm Andrew Trimble.
And, well, first of all, my condolences to you, Coach, about your Devils. I'm sorry they couldn't make it past the second round, but, they did their best.
Yeah, and so if you're going to wish my condolences, I should say congratulations in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes to you. I mean, franchise player.
Yeah, well, that's what they're saying. I mean, everybody else is telling me it's rigged and we're scumbags and we shouldn't get the pick, but I do appreciate it. I do look forward to watching him play. Honestly, I was one of those fans who just said, you know what, I don't like the tanking. I think I've said this before on the podcast. I'm not a fan of the tanking. I'm not, I think there's been some great ideas brought up. I think one of the best ones that I've read is whatever team has the most points after the trade deadline that doesn't make the playoffs should get the first pick. And then you just kind of go from there. So it keeps teams competitive instead of doing this whole lottery thing. But in the meantime, I'm not going to complain because, we're supposed to get a generational talent. So I was ready for him, Fantilli. So either way, I'm looking forward to it. But who are you rooting for now as we move forward?
It's tough. When we're sitting in, we got 3 out of 4 of the positions locked up. We talked about it before. I really like the way Florida plays. I mean, I think that, in the first round, the viewing audience got a kind of glimpse into the competitiveness of that team and some of the stars on that team. And I just really am impressed with how much they compete, how much they compete for each other, and then the skill level, the high-end skill level of that team. So I would say I'm interested in the Panthers. I can't say I'm rooting for anybody, though. How about yourself?
I grew up we got family in Carolina, grew up with them, actually going, we'd fly out there, we'd go see the Raleigh, I think it was the Raleigh Ice Caps back in the old ECHL. So I'd go see games there, and then, when when the Hurricanes finally came out there, I followed them. So long story short, for them, for family, I'm rooting for them right now, but, geez, man, is that me? Fast and the Furious outside here. It's that threw me off. So I mean, honestly, I just want good hockey at this point. I'd love to see the Hurricanes win. I'm glad to see Toronto knocked out, only because I'm sick of the Toronto media and everything and all their fans. But
what next? What next? What is Toronto going to do?
I do feel bad for the fans that are actually not, sitting on Twitter screaming about the refs all day. But I don't know. I mean, that's, as we talked about earlier, before the show, I don't know what you do. I mean, if you're sitting here and you're Kyle Dubois, what do you do? What would you, or some of your ideas of what you would do?
It's really tough. I mean, I think you'd have to look at some of, moving out potentially one of their bigger assets, whether that's Nylander or, is it Tavares? One of those guys who has value and can get something in return. What that ingredient you're getting back, though, I don't know, because you're tied into some of these higher priced guys, and at crunch time, they're not coming through. So it's really, really tough. The talent is there, the depth is there, but I just think they're missing some, innate ingredient that just doesn't translate to playoff hockey. What do you think?
Again, I'm kind of at a loss, as I've been thinking even myself, I got the GM job. What do I do? I don't know if a coaching change is really something that needs to be done, because I think Sheldon Keefe, has been doing a great job, but it's just not going in the playoffs. And maybe it is something in the locker room. Again, as coaches, we like to sit here and say it's never us, but maybe it is. I don't know. It's tough because I do see as we talked, I think, the last podcast about how, they kind of remind me of the early, 2010s, the Blackhawks, of just having that depth all up through the lineup. And I felt like that's what they had. I know they ran into a few injury issues, but yeah, it's tough because a lot of those guys are just not coming through. And, again, I didn't see any big injuries come off at the end of the series saying, oh, so-and-so is sick or hurt or this or that. I didn't see anything where somebody was had their spleen ripped open or something. So I don't know. I would not want that job right now, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, when the Chicago won those 3 cups, they were consistent with the guy behind the bench. A lot of those cup winning teams that are really good for a long time had that consistent presence behind the bench. But I always go back to the Devils, and they had the year before they went to the conference final against the Rangers, they had Herb Brooks as the coach, and then they brought in Jacques Lemaire, and it was a huge improvement. Lemaire was there for a long time after they won the first cup, but then the next 2 cups were 2 totally different coaches, Larry Robinson and Pat Burns. So sometimes it is the voice behind the bench. I know that's just the easy way out sometimes, to blame it on the coach. But maybe like getting a stern taskmaster drill sergeant type coach, a guy maybe like a Daryl Sutter or something like that. I know that he's not in a good place right now, but right. I mean, a guy somewhat like that might pay dividends to ignite a fire in some of those guys who aren't being productive in the playoffs.
I mean, I even look at it across other sports. You've got like the Milwaukee Bucks who just won the NBA championship 2 years ago, and they just fired this year. But Budenholzer, I probably completely butchered that, but it's just crazy how even some of the best coaches, and again, Scotty Bowman, he was fired by what? The Blues, the Penguins. I think maybe he retired from the Penguins or not. I don't remember that one. Buffalo, he was the GM, I think, there. But he retired with the Red Wings, but greatest coach in NHL history, and he's, he went around, Mike Babcock, where he bounced around. Granted, everybody's got their opinion on Babcock, but he won, Yeah. So maybe it is time for a change behind the bench. I just don't think it's on the GM, and I would hate to think that it's on, Keefe, but I don't know. Like I said, I'm not envious of those jobs. Half the time I would sit there and I'm like, God, I'd love to be coaching a team like that, right? We all do. But no, right now I do not want to be in that market right now. Oh, it's insane.
No, there's no second place. Second place is not good enough.
No. So what's going on in your world right now? I know that obviously we call it off season, but silly season. But
just a lot of stuff in the garage, a lot of recruiting. The rosters are shaping up. And just basic that off-season stuff, which kind of doesn't get a lot of the fanfare on wins and losses. But if you don't have a successful off-season, you're not going to have a successful in-season. So we're doing a lot of that stuff now. I think I'm going to start a painting project in the Wolves office maybe next week. So, small little projects like that can add some bells and whistles to the place. How about yourself, Trevor?
I mean, not to, blow smoke up your ass, but I mean, again, I see the videos you guys post on Instagram of just everything you guys offer, and it's awesome from a junior standpoint. Especially, when you're looking at USHL, like I've been, lucky enough to have the Steel here, and we got to see their stuff, that's tier 1, but I mean, what you guys are offering at your level, not even your level, but in your league, I mean, that's phenomenal. It looks all great. The locker room's fantastic. It's really cool. So I just want to say, I mean, kudos to you guys for really putting together a great organization, something where if I'm a player, that's definitely, and again, not pulling smoke up your ass, but, it looks great. So right now, my world, again, spring's kind of just winding down with some skates here and there. I've had to try and talk people off, not talk them off the ledge, but keep them away from U9 AAA hockey that will be having their tryouts here next week, which is it's a joke on its own. So that's basically like my biggest hurdle right now. You've got the recruiting world. I'm just telling, and again, I sent out a nice email to the families that I had for all the 2014s that were in our database, and I just said, hey, look, I'm going to educate you on what AAA hockey is and isn't. This is my opinion. You know what? If you choose to go, great. Good luck. I wish you the best of luck. Doors never close, but here's the reality of it. And, I went into the whole, which kind of brings us into the whole little bit of our topic for today. But before we get there, I mean, more or less, like your best 9-year-olds are typically, a lot of times it's not your best 18-year-olds,
For sure.
And I'll be honest, right now we've got under AAU out here, we've got Mite AAA hockey, so that's even better. So now we're identifying the best 6 and 7-year-olds or 8-year-olds, and it's a madhouse. So Yeah, that's basically what I've been dealing with. But
Ed Jovanovski was the number one pick in the NHL draft and didn't even play hockey till he was 11. So I think
yep.
where would he have started on? What would that be? Pee Wee Triple D or something?
Yes, yeah, but basically, yeah. At that age, 11, yeah.
Ben
yeah, exactly, yeah. Nah, yeah. Better luck next year, Jovanovski. But so I mean, today, great. We have a great discussion with Dave Starman, who, again, fantastic guest. He's involved with USA Hockey in building the ADM. Before we get to that,
well, it's episode 15, and it's about 15 years since they launched the ADM model. So I think it'd be a great discussion about what we've seen over the last 15 years since they've implemented the long-term athletic development within USA Hockey and the structure that the ADM has provided for coaches, players, and parents as they move forward in their hockey careers. Now, I'm a big fan of the ADM, but I also recognize ADM for a lot of organizations wasn't completely out of the box. Playing cross-ice games, having a long-term athletic mindset in mind, having station-based practices to acquire additional skills for kids. Those are all topics and points that a lot of good organizations had in their organizations prior to the ADM. But what have you seen in the last 15 years, Trevor? And what do you think that have been some of the real benefits of the ADM?
The one thing I really liked was the concepts of it gave the coaches somewhat of a baseline, like a guideline. It gave you, here's drills you can do to work on these types of things that are station-based where you keep the kids constantly moving. It gave you a little bit of the why. I know we discussed a little bit later some of those things in our interview with Dave. But, what I really liked about it was, it gave coaches, the guidelines and the ideas and, here's a playbook. Kind of like a playbook, for lack of a better term. And that's something that I feel like, you did have your old school coaches who didn't, there's two of them that I could go back to, two types. One was, I've been doing this forever, and actually three of them. I've been doing this forever, and they weren't. The second one was, They've been doing this forever, and some of it was true, yeah. And then the third one was, I don't need this stuff. I'm going to go back to just running, crap practices, but they thought they were great. So I did like that. I did like the information that it provided. I wish it would have been accepted more or used more across the country. Again, here in Chicago, we still, to this day, and I know a lot of people associate ADM with mites, we still don't have, we don't have cross-ice or half-ice mite hockey. We have full-ice AAU mite hockey, and it doesn't make sense. Let me ask you this, Coach. Did you play any other sports besides hockey growing up as a kid?
Played every sport.
Okay. You played on a baseball team?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, was it, 350 or 400 feet straight down dead center when you were playing baseball, T-ball?
That's you nailed it out of the park right there. Right, absolutely. Every sport does it.
I mean, why does hockey, why do we have to be different? And again, I don't want to take away too much of Coach, Coach, yeah, definitely, Coach Starman's, his discussion, but why does it have to be just like, why does it have to look like what's on TV? Why can't we just, again, my big thing is I always look at it as when your kid goes to math in first grade, are they teaching him pre-calc? No. They're teaching him how to, count to one. Well, by that point, hopefully he can count. But they're teaching him addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. But you can't teach even multiplication and division until you've got, addition and subtraction done. And now we've got these coaches out here who want to do, well, let's just jump to pre-calc and screw the rest of it, and, it's real games. It's not. So that's kind of, I guess, one of my disappointments with it is that, especially out here, it wasn't really, the clubs that did try to truly buy in, we did have two clubs that were considered model USA Hockey ADM modeled programs. It didn't work out for them. and actually probably hurt them more than anything because there just wasn't enough buy-in out here. What was it like on the East Coast when it originally popped out?
I think it was adopted by a lot of organizations. Still, Massachusetts does a lot of full ice mites, which I don't really agree with. But then there's also, there is an accessibility of getting cross ice or off ice mites. But I would say this: I think that, like you said, it gave a great template for a lot of organizations, and hockey really needed to address it. When Gretzky was traded in 1988, all of a sudden, people in Southern California wanted to play hockey. Arizona, they wanted to play hockey. Texas, when the Minnesota North Stars moved to Dallas, now all of a sudden you had, Dallas Stars were investing in the building of rinks, and there's a tremendous amount of Dallas Stars rinks in Greater Texas. In Florida, hockey's huge now. Now you have all these coaches who need something to teach their sons, daughters, and their neighbors how to play hockey. And USA Hockey with the ADM model did a great job of that. It also focused on the dynamic of repetition. When I see my son go to a baseball practice or a basketball practice or a soccer practice, because he plays everything, it's a very old school mentality. It's like you have 8 kids watching as one player bats, or you have you have a basketball and one person shooting and everybody else is rebounding. But if you can extrapolate the ADM model within those sports, it can carry over and you can develop more skills within a same amount of time frame as you would with a hockey practice. And I think that's where ADM really hit it out of the ballpark.
And I forgot what sport. I want to say that, was it, maybe it was it, I don't think so, but was it USA Soccer or something? One of the higher ups or one of the, I want to say soccer reached out to USA Hockey and like, how are you doing your models so that, how to build off of that. Like, again, as you said, the numerous repetitions. I love that too. I love being able to have kids be in line for, 10, 20 seconds standing in line, but then they're right out going and doing the drill all over again. And before it was, okay, you're up. Maybe you sit on the bench for a little bit while the coach dumps the puck in on the goalie. Then you guys break it out. And then that shouldn't even be in your playbook to begin with, but that's what it was, So
there also was a really, really important they broke down the steps too, and the steps are important. When I started to do skills for different youth organizations up here in New Hampshire, I started in New Jersey, then we moved up here in 2012, and I was hired to do skills for a couple different local youth organizations. And I remember I was introduced as the new guy for this one program in like eastern New Hampshire, about an hour from here. And after about the first or second practice, which was all focused on skills and stations, the coach pulled me, one of the coaches, old school coaches, pulled me aside and said, hey, today can we just focus on passing? My guys need work on passing. And I said, well, they need to learn how to skate. They need to learn how to play with their head up if they're going to be good passers. He's like, no, they don't need that. They need to work on passing. So I did my practice, and I think he quit being a coach or yelled at me or something. But whatever. It's like, you need those building blocks. If you don't have the building blocks, you're never going to get to the goal at the end of the road. So a player needs to be able to skate, needs to be able to play with his head up, he needs to be able to handle the puck, all if he wants to be able to pass the puck. One thing leads into the other, and that made a lot of sense with the ADM model.
Absolutely. So, you know what? Right here, why don't we jump in with Dave Starman, and we will hear what he's got. He's one of the original people involved in USA Hockey with ADM model. So, again, great interview, and we'll jump in right here.
All right, well, we have a special guest with us on today's Hockey Toolkit. Welcome to the podcast, Dave Starman. Dave Starman is the voice of college hockey. He's also been a longtime professional, amateur, and college coach for the last 30 years, and he's heavily involved with USA Hockey, so he's a great guest for our topic today of ADM. Welcome to the podcast, Dave.
It is good to be back talking hockey with you, Trim. What's going on?
Well, actually, you brought up a great point. We were just talking prior to jumping on the podcast here about symposiums and making the topics that you're teaching, across age groups and dynamics, accessible for each group. Now, the ADM really covers a lot of that within USA Hockey. What if, looking back down the road of the last 10, 15 years, what do you think are some of the strengths you've seen out of the ADM model?
That's a great question. And I think one of the things that the ADM did really well was the age appropriate modules that they designed for coaches to take as they were advancing to the next levels. And one of the good things about the ADM, and there's many of them, but to me, at its base level, what the ADM was designed to do was to teach coaches how to coach, was to teach them how to teach, and was to teach them how to relate to players on an age-specific, age-appropriate level. And if it did nothing else other than that, it would have been a success. I mean, it's done so much more. But if that was all it got through, it was so worth it. And it's interesting because I have two sisters that are teachers, and whenever I was working in youth hockey, and I felt I wasn't connecting, I used to talk to my sisters who taught various different grades, but I would say to them, hey, listen, I've got third graders, you teach third grade. What's the best way for me to talk to these kids so that I can put what I'm trying to say from my language into their language so they can hear me? And what's the best way to explain it to them with their attention spans? So, I mean, I learned a lot from my sisters who were teachers. And I think that what the ADM did was encapsulate that theory of talking to people at various age groups to be able to instruct our coaches that are coaching different ages to be able to treat those kids like they're that age, to be able to talk to players that are that age, and be able to develop them at that age based on their physical, mental, and emotional state.
That's a great answer, Dave. One of the questions I get from coaches and parents is that the ADM does a great job of providing a template and a structure that you can use throughout, one practice, extrapolate over the course of the year. But one of the things it lacks is maybe some of the details of how to properly do this, or how to properly do that. For a coach that would ask you that, where would you say to that coach to go investigate and get that information?
First of all, Trim, I think you bring up a great point. And I was just talking about this today with a guy that I coached with for a long time. He's in Springfield, Mass. His name is Frank Genovese. He used to be the assistant coach at AIC. And Frank and I were talking about a tournament that we were just at, the pre-draft. And we were talking about the difference between watching more of the 18 and the 19-year-olds versus the 16 and the 17-year-olds. And it's really interesting because when you watch the 16s especially, but even a little bit into the 17s, you don't see the same hockey sense you see in the older kids. And I think that one of the areas where the ADM fell short was the hockey sense component. I don't think we taught that enough. Now, I understand why we didn't get heavily involved in it, especially at the youth level, because we wanted to make sure the kids had the ABCs, the agility, the balance, coordination. We wanted to make sure that skill development was an important component, because if you've got skill and if you can skate, then everything else should fall into place. But I do think at the older levels, it is much more incumbent upon us to really now teach them the game so that we can further develop what their skills bring to the table. So that to me is where it comes together. And that's where a lot of good symposiums are out there. Roger Nielsen's coaching clinic used to be the 10 beller. I mean, I was just cleaning out my office the last couple of weeks of like a lot of old hockey stuff, because I've got just, as you know, Chair, I've got volumes of stuff.
I'm going to check out that office one day.
Oh God! I mean, it's like a little museum right now, and I mean, I found all of my Roger Nielsen's books with all my notes in them, starting in like '92. So I mean, like that was always the bell standard of coaching symposiums, and many good ones have come through. Right now, I really feel like the coaches site is one of those symposiums that does a really good job of something that we talked about before we jumped on, and that was they have all kinds of different coaches on their platform, website, and live during their presentations, which I think talk more to the youth coach, to the junior coach, to the high school coach, to the women's coach. I feel like they have geared it towards not talking about what they do at the NHL, because what they're doing at the NHL sometimes, or I should say most of the time, does not translate to 12U, 14U, 16U.
If there's one, looking back on the last 15 years of ADM and the growth of USA Hockey, if there's one thing that you could tweak and maybe implement that hasn't been done yet, what's that one thing?
That's a great question. I think part of it we chatted about just a little bit ago, and that is the building into the hockey sense component. I will tell you this: I do think that USA is due to redo a lot of the modules that are out there. Like, I really feel like almost on a yearly basis the game evolves, and I do feel like it's important that almost on an every 2-year cycle those modules get updated for every age group, whether it be different people speaking or different coaches coming in to do stuff and different video being used, because I just think that expands the knowledge of the coaches that are watching them. So that would be number one. And like I said, number two, I think it's really incumbent upon us to get back to teaching the game. We don't want to make robots out of the players. You and I have talked about that a ton in our coaching philosophy. And you come from a coaching family, and we all know how important it is to let players be creative and let players play and let players figure things out and let them fail so that they can learn from their failure. But I do think that we need to give them a little bit more of what the structure of the game looks like, because as skilled as they are coming up through the ranks, they're going to have to fit into some kind of a system down the road. So I really think it's important that we start to introduce them at least to the basics of what system hockey looks like.
I think that's another thing too. Like my son Barron is with a great program here in New Hampshire. He's with the Seacoast Spartans. He's had a really good, fun season last year. He's just a mite, but the USA Hockey talks a great deal about the long-term development model, creating a long-term athlete, and I think that's one area that how to implement that properly into a practice or after a practice. I think there can be greater language about that, and then you are one of the great video announcers or video commentators and giving that feedback to players. I think that's another place that we could talk about as coaches within USA Hockey of, here's a good 15-minute, 10-minute segment you can spend on your players and what that looks like and how that could potentially transform a kid's game.
There's no question. And I think, it's funny. You just sparked my mind on something, and it's interesting because I do so much video. I think that the biggest mistake youth hockey coaches make is, well, first of all, not a lot of them have enough time to prepare video, or they don't have the software or know how to use the software to edit video properly. I do think that with things like Huddle, I think it's starting to get easier for youth coaches to be able to do that, and that's a very good platform. And they sponsor a lot of the stuff that we do at the coaches site, which is great. And so I do think it's important for some of these coaches, especially the younger ones, to really be video proficient and not just being able to break down a video, but being able to put one together so they can use it for instructional purposes with the bells and whistles that can, whether it be the straight lines or the vision squares or whatever the case may be. So that's part one. And part two is learning how to run a video session. I have worked with more youth hockey coaches who say, yeah, we're gonna do video for an hour and then we're gonna have a practice. I'm like, video for an hour? I said, you're wasting 55 minutes. I said, if that video session is any longer than 5 to 7 minutes, those kids aren't paying attention. I don't care what they're showing them. You could be showing them
totally right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you could put SpongeBob on; they're gonna be lost in 20 minutes. So, I mean, it's like if you're doing video. I mean, this is the same thing with pro. Listen, you coach an older level team, Trim. You know it. You got to get in there 5-6 minutes and done. 5
Definitely.
Clips and out. And same thing when you're doing player video with just individual kids. It's got to be 3-4 minutes, couple of shifts here, couple of shifts there, and the key component, the buzzword I always like, is showing them what right looks like. So you show them themselves and what they did well, and there's always the sandwich mentality of something good, something not good, back to something good, finalize the sandwich, but show them what right looks like. And if you have to use a clip from an upper level demonstration, NHL, USHL, whatever the case is, that's good to do too. But I'll conclude the video component with this, and this is a mistake we all make. You know that. So we'll be showing video, and we'll try to get our defensemen to do something higher level, whether it be rushing the puck or jumping in the rush or dive downs, whatever, right? And we pick Adam Fox as our example to show our young defensemen how to do it right. There are guys in the NHL that can't do what Adam Fox does. There's no way in hell a 16-year-old is going to do what Adam Fox is doing. So as I've often, and obviously you coach my son Ryan, the one thing I used to tell Ryan all the time was, go get some video of Dave Longevin and Kenny Morrow and figure out what they do. I said, if you master that, we'll move up the line and find somebody better. But let's not start with the Drew Dowdys and the Adam Foxes and the Cale Makars of the world, because like I said, there are defensemen in their league that can't do what they do.
Absolutely. Trevor, what kind of stuff do you have for Dave?
No, I mean, Dave, it's obviously a pleasure to be able to sit here and talk with you. We've interacted a little bit on Twitter, and just again the video aspect and hearing your voice. It's always good to put a face to the voice. So we do appreciate.
Except if it's my face.
No, you don't have a face for radio. No, you're good. But I mean, so going back on the ADM, where do you see USA Hockey taking coaching within the next, or at least where do you think they should be taking it within the next 5-10 years? Where do you see it going, I guess is probably a better way of putting it.
I think that's a great question. No, it's a really good question. It's an important question, and it's a question that the ADM guys talk about all the time. Like from the past groups that I've been a part of, and I'm assuming the groups that are doing it now are still having that discussion. Like, what next? And sometimes it's not necessarily what are we doing with the curriculum. Sometimes it's what are we doing with the rules of the game to try to enhance certain things. And I know USA Hockey's taken out the touch up offside rule. As soon as it's offside, they blow it down automatically. So they're trying to get defensemen or players to make more plays in the neutral zone and not just hammer it back in. So you're not allowed to ice the puck when you're killing a penalty. I mean, that's another thing they've implemented. So they haven't necessarily done something curriculum-wise, but they've put something out there to challenge coaches to try to react differently to different stimuli on the ice. Some people think it's a great idea. Some people don't. But these are the things that we as a coaching body need to talk about. What can we do to make the game either more difficult or more unique, that we have to now challenge our players to do different things and think at higher levels? And again, that's where the hockey sense component comes in. So I think that's part one. I do think it's important that we continue to hammer down on the age-appropriate concept, because we've got a whole new wave of coaches that are coming in that have no idea what we went through on day one when we launched the ADM. So people now think cross-ice hockey is a really good thing. People think half-ice hockey now is a really good thing. People understand station-based practices are really good things. So they're not fighting the same battles that all of us still have the wounds in our back and the scars from when we roll this out, and we're really proud of it, right? So I think that for the coaches now, especially all these younger kids that are going to take off their skates as competitive players and get into coaching, I think it is so important that we reintroduce them to that concept of the last team you played for isn't the way you coach your 8U team. You've got to understand that there are dynamics involved, and the buzzword that Kenny Rauch used to be at USA Hockey for a long time. Kenny always got me thinking this, because an 18-year-old is not half a 16-year-old. You can't treat them that way. So I do think it's important that we as a coaching body continue to mentor our young coaches and teach them how to coach.
I think my last question I would have, and again, that's all great information, and I agree. I mean, out here in Chicago, they're still playing by the Wild Wild West rules of
Chicago is always, by the way, one of the areas where it didn't grip as quick.
No.
I always remember, all the where are we having success and where are we not, and Chicago was always a name that kept buzzing.
Yeah, it's we still have full ice mite hockey out here, that's a story for another day. But I guess my one other question would be, what do you think is a common misconception about the ADM? Like, what would be one of your misconceptions that you'd like to put to rest?
That the ADM is all about playing cross-ice mites. It's not. Like, that was the biggest misconception, I think, at the beginning, was that's what the ADM, it's about playing cross-ice hockey. It's about stations. It's not about teaching the game. It's not about anything else other than that. And that is so not what the ADM was. The ADM was a comprehensive, age-appropriate system from 8U to 18U on how to properly develop players along the lines of long-term athlete development. And again, Kenny Rauch, this is another one of his great buzzwords. And what race are we winning? What race are we running in? And where's the finish line? The finish line is not 18U. The finish line is, can you continue playing past that into college hockey, into potentially pro hockey, and what kind of impact can you have on USA Hockey down the road and hockey in our country as you move along? So I think that people didn't understand the fact that the ADM was this long-term plan to get our kids playing other sports in combination with hockey, to develop multi-sport athletes, to develop really good student athletes, to develop kids that can play different positions throughout their youth career until they settle in on one, and expose them to all different kinds of skill development challenges within small areas so that they can take that to the bigger surface. That's what people didn't want to understand. All they wanted to tell you was, well, Bantam hockey doesn't look like the NHL. What you're doing here doesn't look like the NHL. Yep. Well, it's not supposed to. Like that was the thing we had to say. It's not supposed to yet. Like it. Even Trim, you're coaching junior. There are times junior hockey doesn't look like the NHL, right? So I mean, like, there's no way Bantam is going to look that way.
Far from it.
Right. So I mean, that's the problem we ran into early. I think we've solved a lot of that, but once again, I do think that there have to be some serious discussions now on When do we get more into the concept of teaching our coaches what systems are and translating that to the players so that they know how to play in structure and they know when they interchange positions what the rules of the road are going forward.
No, absolutely, and it's funny you said that because we, Blackhawks clearly, they really took off right around when the ADM was really coming into full force, and I remember, as you just said, oh, this doesn't look like real hockey, and again, these are parents that have never played, but because Hawks are great, their kids want to be the next Patrick Kane, so it's, and I can't tell you how many times we've had Bob Mancini out who does a fantastic job, but and I love sitting there listening to him talk because he's as blunt as hell, and he'll tell you really how it is. But how many times he's had to come through the Midwest here, especially the Illinois area, and just kind of go on like, this is what it's not. This is what it's supposed to be. This is not what it's not supposed to be. So I 100% agree with you. I think you hit the nail on the head there. So. That's pretty much all I have.
Well, Bobby's a good Long Island guy like I am. Like we don't pull any punches. He's just,
no.
Bobby's a little bit more blunt than I am, but we really feel the same way. And he is a brilliant mind. He's a brilliant hockey mind. I love the way he sees the game. He and I have gone at it on numerous occasions on like the different rule changes and some of the things that we want to implement and how we see it from different perspectives. And we're both parents of sons that are defensemen, so we do see the game similar to that, but we also disagree too. I will tell you this: USA Hockey should be the model for the nation in terms of being able to disagree, scream and yell at each other, and throw things at each other in a closed room while we're discussing stuff. And then when it's all over, everybody say, "Okay, I think we got a lot of work done here. Let's go eat." It's just some of those old ADM meetings. They got intense and they got heated. And then when it was over, we said, "You know what? We made the game better. We might not all agree, but we made the game better."
Oh, that's the beauty of it.
That's fantastic. Dave, I got one final question for you.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to put you on the spot. I know you're a big Grateful Dead fan.
Oh, yeah.
I know that Ryan lived in Ocean Grove last year.
Yep. Yes, he did.
So I'm a Jersey Shore guy,
Oh, that's right, you are, yeah.
So did you take him to any Bruce Springsteen locations? He's surrounded by Asbury Park and Freehold, the Stone Pony. Did you make any of those trips? Come on, that's rock history, my friend.
God, you're so good. So you know what? It's the first day we went over to Ocean Grove, and I knew it was right next to Asbury Park. And so we're driving there, and I told them the story of Springsteen before the Born to Run album. And I said, Springsteen's career was at a crossroads, and nobody knew where it was going, and he knew his next album had to be a big one. And obviously that's when Born to Run came out. But shortly before then was when he played the Stone Pony, which, right where it is, right across from the boardwalk there. And I showed Ryan, I said, it was in this place right here where Rolling Stone magazine saw Springsteen play, and the quote came out, "I've just seen the future of rock and roll, and its name is Bruce Springsteen." It happened right there in that club. And all of his buddies like, "Wow, that's so cool." And half of them hadn't heard of Springsteen, but like the ones that did, they're like, "Wow, that's really cool." So yes, absolutely, we have definitely tried to sell the historical aspect of what Asbury Park has meant to the rock and roll scene then and now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Dave, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. This was great information, and I thank you so much for taking the time out of your day.
You got it, Triv. Absolutely. I will talk again hopefully soon, and enjoy the spring, allegedly the off season.
Yeah.
Facility season.
Fill me in when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
You got it. Take care, guys.
Well, that was a great interview with Dave. Great guy. Really the voice of college hockey, and he really gets out there and explains in great detail what the ADM is all about. Trevor, what was some of the big takes you took out from Dave's segment with us?
First of all, Dave, again, like as Coach Trimble said here, thank you for coming on. Awesome having you on. Some of the big takeaways, I really liked his, getting a little bit more involved with the structure of the game. I think that is something that is a little bit lacking. But one of the other big things is, and something that I've been preaching, especially at the younger ages, that, I used to get a lot of, not crapback, but I used to get a lot of, flack for was, I'm not teaching your kids to be robots. I want them to be more creative. I want them to think for themselves. As a coach at any age level, I'm not yelling at your kids, whether I'm coached last season at 16U or this spring at 9U. I'm not yelling from the bench on what to do. Like, hey, move your feet, or, we got to get going, or line change, or like dump it. Okay, little things like that, but I'm not telling kids to pass it. I want them to think for themselves. I want them to see it. And then when they come back, I'm going to teach them on the bench, like, this is the situation, and as you said, you got your sandwich. This is what you did good. Here's what we could maybe possibly change. And, I'll give the kid the marker and say, hey, what could you have done? What could we have done differently here? And then, follow it up with, hey, whatever, another positive, like, great, it's a great effort. Let's just keep banging away at this and figure it out. And those are things that I think that, again, Dave said that there needs to be a little bit of change in there with the structure and just a little bit more freedom. How about yourself, Coach?
I thought he had a lot of great points right off the bat. And I also thought that he brought up a really great point that gets overlooked, and that's having age-appropriate practices. So many times you'll see somebody, coach, go out there on YouTube, and they'll be like, oh, this is a great drill. But it is a great drill for maybe 14s, but it's a terrible drill for U10s.
Right.
It's not about the drill. It's like you're teaching to your audience, and whatever you're teaching has to apply to your audience. So I think Dave brought up a great point that sometimes gets overlooked. If you're not teaching skills all the time, or drills are only a part of the equation, it's the total picture of the type of kids you have, the type of things you're trying to implement, the type of skills you're trying to teach, and then making sure that has a long-term focus in mind so you can build it up over the course of a season or career.
No, definitely. And again, it was, I got a lot of info out of it. And I love the basically the honesty of it. There are things that need to be fixed, but that's okay. I mean, you've got the groundwork laid there. When done correctly and used, and again, will I sit here as a coach and say I've done everything part of the ADM? No, I'm not going to sit here and say I have, but I've used a lot of the concepts. And for me, coming up at, again, 15 years ago, I would have been 19. So, I mean, it really was about 20 when I started coaching. Like, that's what I was taught, and it was, brought up about, oh, might hockey, it's all about might. No, it's not. It's, as you said, it's station-based, it's how can we get the most out of this time that we're out here? How can we get the kids better? And I think we've done a pretty good job. There's always room for improvement, but again, from my standpoint, I really enjoyed talking to Coach Dave, and seeing what he had there. Absolutely.
You ready to move on to 5 myths?
Let's knock her out.
All right. 5 myths of the ADM. This will be a good topic. I know that we'll also have some people who may disagree. We might have some disagreements on this segment, which is a rarity for us.
Yeah, but, never know.
Let's go for it. 5 myths. I got the first one.
Yep.
And it's all about small area games. That's what everybody always says. It's all about small area games. Small area games were not invented by the ADM. They existed a long time before the ADM. But it's all about, as I said earlier, repetitions. And if you're playing a small area game, the puck moves quicker. It gets on the kids' sticks a lot quicker and more frequently. So small area games were a good dynamic to incorporate in the ADM because it fits in the organizational or overall overlapping philosophy. So although small area games are a critical piece, they've always been a critical piece of hockey.
No, right.
Simple as that. So maybe some people who weren't really familiar with running hockey practices down in the South when they started to, try to grow the game down in the Sun Belt, weren't familiar with that term or that concept. But it's always been a part of hockey practices, a part of hockey coaching, and it's just a small piece of the overall ADM philosophy.
And I agree on that. With that one, small area game, especially out here in Chicago, everybody, as soon as it came out, the big argument was, oh, it's about cross-ice games and it's not real hockey, as we talked about before, which that's not true. It's still hockey. And again, as you said, you're getting more repetitions. You're getting more, goalies are seeing more pucks. The players are touching the puck more. Instead of using a full 200 by 85 rink, where you've seen it just as much as I have, where it's basically the top 3 or 4 kids who can handle the puck go from one end of the zone from one end of the rink to the other, and they're the ones creating all the all the chaos, all the potential scoring chances, and then the one kid who never touches the puck, but he just goes back and forth. If he's standing in front of the net and the puck trickles out and he scores, it's the greatest thing in the world. Well, okay, yeah, scoring goals great, but what did that kid really get out of it? He learned how to basically skate up and down the rink, So, yeah, I don't disagree whatsoever. It's not all about small area games. Mine kind of falls into that. Number 2 is it's not real hockey, the ADM. And again, I equate this just to basically what I was just saying. Might as well just rewind and listen to it again. But, ADM, again, everybody thought it was for mites. It was just all about mites, and it's not. And I know that's something that gets talked about here in a little bit. But it is real hockey. You are running station, it's station-based where we're running specific drills to work on hockey concepts or to work on skills. It's not going to be your flow drills, which, they have their time and place, but you don't need it. And, you don't always need those. Again, playing cross-ice games, half-ice games, like, again, a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old doesn't need to be going up and down the ice, again, playing 200 by 85. Like, as we said before, I'm not trying to hit a ball when I was in T-ball out of a field that was the size of Wrigley. I didn't have a green monster I had to try and hit that thing over. In soccer, our fields were smaller. Or, football, they're not having you play a full 100 yards. At least I don't think so. Hell, golf, they move the tees all the way up for you. So it's basically, it's still hockey. It's still getting kids to play the game.
I agree. And, the game, when you boil down to it, it's based upon an overall skill set, right? Kids need to be able to skate, need to handle the puck, need to play with their head up, need to be able to shoot, need to be able to think the game, be in a good position to get passes and get pucks. And all that, correlates on a smaller surface. So the idea that, you can play on a bigger surface and capture a lot of those skills is kind of counterintuitive because it's not the same. It's not the same game. The size of the player to the size of the rink is a real ratio, and that makes it real hockey.
Right. And again, the one thing I like to, I was told was, the game is played one zone at a time. You got to get from the defensive zone to the neutral zone to the offensive zone. And in each zone, you're doing something different to a certain extent, or you might be doing some of the same stuff, but it's one zone at a time. And, you can't get from the you could, if you ice the puck, get it to the defensive zone and the offensive zone, but it's still going to go through the neutral zone. But so the game is played in small areas. So, yeah, that was my number 2. I think number 3 we've kind of knocked off as well, but
no. Number 3 is a little bit different. So number 3 is cross ice mites just benefits rink owners. And where there is a benefit to that, where you can get more kids on a sheet of ice if it's divided up correctly, and it can consume a smaller amount of time, that definitely benefits a rink owner. But what I think it benefits, and what I've seen at youth levels, and specifically with young kids, is that kids want to be part of events. They want to go to things that, like, there's other kids at the rink and there's a buzz in the rink. If you got one team playing another team, that's cool. But now if you have 4 or 5 teams, it feels like a tournament. It feels like there's something going on. There's a buzz. And I've always said to coaches that the biggest metric for a good coach at U8 and basically U10 too is turnover rate. Is that kid coming back? Does he still want to play hockey at the end of the season? And if they're going to events that are fun, where there's a lot of different kids and there's a lot of a fun buzz in the building, then they're going to want to come back. And so I think cross-ice mites not just benefit rink owners, but it really benefits the kids too.
Yeah, when it, again, so I was still relatively fresh coach, ADM out here in Chicago. We had jamborees where you would have, you'd split the ice into thirds. Each zone had its own game, and basically, kids were bouncing in and out. Mite jamborees, basically, that's literally what they're called. They were bouncing around, on and off the ice. They're, having fun. They're chasing each other around. It was fun. It was, as a coach, it was tiring because you're trying to track down kids. You're trying to keep the play going, and not all of us had the big boards that USA Hockey provided, so we had to use, little borders that we would have. But, yeah, those are great. And, and you also say it, okay, rink owners, but also from a parent standpoint, it should be making the game more affordable too at those younger ages.
Yes. Because
you're putting more kids on the ice, so your overhead as a program shouldn't be as much. Now, I get it. Clubs have to run, they can't run it as a deficit. With that being said, you don't really need to rake in, hundreds of thousands of dollars on these little jamborees. I mean, you're putting more kids on the ice, so it should theoretically be cheaper. Now, again, you got the Jersey mob, you got the Chicago mob. You don't know what they're involved in here and there, but again, the idea I know behind ADM also, one of them was, hey, we can get more kids on the ice, more kids active, which would make this more financially feasible for those kids getting into the game, and hopefully that, as they go on, okay, we can keep and retain more of those players. So I agree with you on that one. It's not those shady rink owners.
One of the funny things that I always remember with that buzz in the rink. So my son is 7. He's going to be 8 at the beginning of this season. When he was 5, he was doing cross ice, and that probably was his first organized year of hockey, although he's been skating probably since he was like 2.5, 3 years old. But he would get out there, buzz around. The crowd's going wild. There's a bunch of people in the stands because they're from 4 different teams. So it looks like a pack. It might as well be Madison Square Garden. There's a million fans out there. And he would usually have like a good first shift. I mean, I think if he played 10 games that year, he probably scored a goal in the first shift in like 4 or 5 of the games. Once he scored that first goal, though, he'd get out there and just do laps, wave to the fans, just go up around the glass, wave to his grandma, wave to his grandpa. And it was just awesome. Like, that's all he wanted to do at that point, to show off that he scored.
And that's what it's about at that age. It's not about playing 40 games a year and identifying kids as the top of their birth year at that age. It's disgusting. Sorry, I'm still not over it, but I will be, maybe eventually. Number 4, programs and coaches need to follow it to the letter or to the T. And this is where I think that, again, the ADM has provided a great, foundation. It's filled with information. It is lacking in certain information, as Dave said, it's not, and you said as well, it's not giving you the full, okay, this is how you teach this type of skill always, and again, that's stuff that we should know and we should go out as coaches to find. But if I'm running a practice, I don't have to always make sure that I'm running an ADM drill, or I don't have to make sure that, everything aligns exactly with it. It's okay to go outside the bubble here. It's no one's holding, well, I don't know, but I would hope not. No one's holding the gun to your head saying you need to teach from week 1 to all the way through the whole thing. But again, it provides that framework for coaches to go out and build, and not only just start where they're at, but if you have to go back and do a refresher on a certain thing, okay, we're going to make sure that if we're running this station-based drill, we're going to do it for 3-4 weeks and see how it goes. Or, hey, you know what? Maybe we're not ready to jump to it. Maybe, maybe I saw something on the coach's site, or I saw something on ice hockey systems that I really like.
Yep.
There's no one sitting there, unless it's mandated to you by the club that you're with, that says you have to do it. So I think a lot of people were, when it initially came out, at least some of the people I talked to, who are no longer coaching because they shouldn't have been, they thought that it was just going to be like, oh, well, now they're telling us how to do our jobs. No one ever came in and said, you can't be a coach. Like, you can't still do your own thing to a certain extent, but hey, here's guidelines. Here's something to help you. And I think a lot of people were like some coaches were kind of threatened by it to a certain extent, if you could say that. I guess that's my opinion. Sticking to it, but
I agree with you. I think that's one thing that, like, any good coach, though, any passionate good coach who's in it for the right reasons is a lifelong learner, and they want to learn more. If it's coming from a good place, and you can gather more information to improve your craft, then that's good information, and you should embrace that, getting better at what you want to do. When I do my skills with different local youth programs, and I'll incorporate our Wolves players who are here from all over the country, and I'll take the kid who's the best shooter, and we'll do a old school style shooting tutorial station where they're like just working on the fundamentals of a wrist shot, because that kid who can shoot really well can explain it to him, and the kids want to learn from like these superstar Wolves players who are in the building, So you can tweak it and fit to the dynamics of the group you have coaches that you have and make it work for you. But I think the overall philosophy of having station-based practices to acquire skills and improve the amount of repetitions you're getting in practice, that's foolproof. That you can use that anywhere. That's a great model.
Right. And again, I mean, this isn't to say that as a coach, your whole practice even has to be station-based. There might be drills that you want to do. I think the big thing for me that I took out of it was there's ways from how I was taught, how I was coached. There's better ways of doing things. And here's some of those ideas. And again, that's what I took from it. And I didn't feel threatened by it. I sat in the coaches' clinics, and yeah, sometimes you're just like, all right, can we get over this? Or I'm tired of hearing about the ADM. Like, okay, we get it. Like, I'm on your side, guys. Like, I'm part of your team. Like, I agree. I'm like, can I learn something else now? But I mean, again, I even got them right here, like literally right next to us. Here we go. Associate level manual, ADM handbook number 1. Like, I mean, yeah. Nowhere in here does it say follow this to a T or you will be a terrible coach. Like, I've got stuff in here. This is number 1. I mean, it's not even stuff that's on the ice. There's stuff about what to do off the ice. Yeah. How to hold a parent meeting. I mean, this is stuff that again, it's still relevant to today. Hopefully it's only going to get better.
Well, the one nice thing on that topic too is you said like you don't have to follow to the letter. I also think that coaches, when you reach those lulls in the season or a dip in the season, that's a great time to tweak it a little bit. Go from a station-based practice one day to a full ice scrimmage.
Absolutely.
Go to a practice that has more full ice drills, because it is a full ice game at a certain point, and kids need to learn full ice drills. But put the stations on the back burner for a little bit. Spend 15, 20 minutes of your hour-long practice on something else and break up the monotony, because that's important too.
Absolutely. All right, Coach, what do you got for number 5?
Myth number 5, ADM was created for all players. I think, it's really important when you introduce your son or daughter to the game to have like a slow approach. Every kid's going to be different. Some kids are going to want to jump in the pool. Some kids want to dip their toe in and go to their ankle. Once you do that, though, you're going to have to evaluate and look at where your kid, if they want to go to an advanced setting where they're improving their skills, that's great. But if you throw them into something that they're not ready for, maybe a house league or a rec league might be a better place for them. So I would just, I would implore parents to not be searching for like the high-end programs all the time. Take a minute, sit down, look at your kid. If they also want to play basketball in the winter, let them play basketball. Let them play hockey. Let them play all the sports so they can get an understanding of the full scope and experience of the athletic experience. But if you throw them in right to a high-intensity ADM-only program, you might burn them out. So be careful of doing that.
No, for sure. And again, I think for all, coaches, and not only parents, but basically coaches, you gotta know your team. Read the team, see what it is, see where the players are at, see how they want to go with it. And again, for parents, there's different skill levels involved in the game. I mean, some kids might benefit, they might be more advanced, or they can do some, team-wise, they might be able to do more than another, team. And within this, guide that we have, these ideas, these foundations that you can adjust. As coaches, you can adjust what you can add tweaks, you can do progressions. It's amazing what you can do, and it's just not all about, one specific age level, one specific group. So before we take off there, Coach, Dave brought up a good point, or brought up a good topic. And I was, I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Was the basically, I've been dealing with it this last year, specifically when I had the midget age group at 16U, the rule changes. He brought up about, playing, with the, no delayed offsides, which was a real kind of kick in the pants for us because out here in Illinois, we've got obviously high school hockey and we've got AA hockey, AAA hockey, but only at the high school level do they allow delayed offsides at the midget age. Whereas if you are at the AA level and, not high school, but you're playing in a AA league, USA Hockey rules state that you can't have them, delayed offsides. Or, you can't ice the puck. And again, I understand the reasoning behind them both. As Dave said, I don't disagree with it. But at what age do we kind of stop putting in those, restrictions, and kind of just let the kids, again, now I'm kind of on the other side of it, but let the kids actually play the game, that like they see on TV. I mean, like, what age is it do you think is acceptable for that? Because again, I don't disagree that, hey, you know what, let's put in no icing on a penalty kill when you're in mite, square, peely, even bantams. I'm completely fine with that because those kids need to learn how to get their heads up and read situations. I'm fine with that. But when we're talking about kids that are in their final 4 years of hockey, who end up going to be most of the time men's league players or, women's league players, like, why? I feel like sometimes we're kind of doing too much and we're doing too much and thinking it's, great and all this. And maybe it is, but I don't know. Instead of me rambling here, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I know where you're getting at, Trevor, and that's a great question. And I think that certainly every governing body with hockey is open to change. Like you look at the NHL and they, after the lockout, they took out the red line. That was a great move. It opened up the game, created more speed. You didn't have as many of the neutral zone trap teams were effective, but coaches are smart and they put in 1-1-3s or 1-3-1s to kind of clog up the neutral zone. So coaches are always ahead of the curve a little bit. They put the trapezoid in, for Brodeur to not move the puck as quickly. I don't think that's been a great rule. But specifically when he said it, and you brought it up, I didn't want to put Dave on the spot too much because we had I did coach Ryan, his son, last year, great kid. And we had a end of the season tournament. We were our team was in the semifinals. We were down 1-0 and we got a 5-minute major. And
you had the 5-minute major or you had the 5-minute power play off of the major?
We had the power play.
Okay.
So we had an opportunity to tie the game and
just getting the picture painted here for me.
Yep. Painting the picture. It was down in Florida. It was a great tournament and the team was battling. It was a great back and forth game. But that 5-minute major, I think Dave actually told me after the game, in real time minutes, took something like 15 minutes because the other team was just icing the puck. And I told our guys the same thing. It's not a penalty to ice the puck. We're killing the penalty. We'll take that face off because we can win it again and ice it again and get new guys on for the penalty kill. So it makes sense for us to take that stoppage instead of being in the zone for 2 minutes. So I really think that rule has really hurt the game at that level. Where I think the biggest dramatic...
And these were 16-year-olds, right?
These were 16-year-olds.
Okay, just making sure so everybody knows, yeah.
Yep, and
they should know they should know where you're coaching and your background and your biography and all that, but...
Not that big a deal, it's okay. I think that rule has really hindered the flow of the game, but more importantly, Dave hit on a thing where he talked about the structure of the advanced structure of the game. So, power play breakouts. You don't need to teach your team power play breakouts now if every time they ice it, there's a face-off in the offensive zone.
Right.
And that's an important skill for defensemen and offensive players to learn, is how to structure a power play breakout. Defensemen picking up the puck behind the net and making a good first pass, reading the forecheck on a penalty kill. Those are important skills. Why are we taking those out of the game?
Right.
I don't understand it.
And again, that's where I come back. Where I was, after in certain points of games this year, I'd look at my assistant and my step brother and be like, we'd just both be shaking our heads like this is not helping. It's more or less. And again, I mean, we did not have a good record this year. We were not in the right league. This and that. I mean, I've already said it numerous times. So any time that we had a chance when we were killing a penalty, and we didn't take many penalties either, but we were able to ice it. why do I have to be punished? Why do they have to be punished? Because these kids in 2 years are going to go to men's league if they don't go and play college or juniors or whatever. But okay, realistically, eventually all roads lead to men's league. So why am I, 4 years from now, 3 years from now, 2 years from now, whatever they are at midgets, when they go to play men's league, most men's leagues, as soon as you get it over your own blue line, you can dump it out and it's not considered, icing or whatever, So, why are we taking that away? And you just made a great point. You have to learn how to read the play. You have to know how to read the forecheck. And again, it's just as important on the, even strength as it is when you're up a man or you're down a man. Again, teams play different neutral zone, but more importantly, even offensive zone forechecks when they're killing penalties. So, sometimes I feel like it's one of those things where we get in the way of a little bit of ourselves. And it's not like, when USA Hockey came back and put more of the, emphasis on standard play with the physicalness of hockey, of the, you got to be playing the puck and to play the body. And I remember when that first happened, there's penalties galore, where at this point it's like it doesn't even feel like it's called anymore, at least, in our leagues. But so that one kind of fades itself out. But you can't kind of trickle away the no icing on a power play.
Well, the one part of that too is that they're overlooked and that they didn't put that in. They didn't add that rule. And I think and truthfully, I think a lot of the other rules that they changed were positive, and you can make adjustments, and it has helped players in certain respects. But
absolutely,
when they put that penalty kill icing rule in, they didn't attach to it that you can't change your killers. So, like at the junior level, if you ice the puck at 5-on-5, you can't. Those guys have to stay on the ice.
Right.
On a penalty kill, if you did that, they'd stay on the ice, for a long time. I mean, that would be really, really
right.
tough. So in reality, what that rule did is it really benefited penalty kills instead of what they tried to do was benefit power plays, because you can have fresh killers out every single time, and you might only have 1 or 2 units that you even practice the power play with. So they're going to be gassed, and the killers are always fresh.
Right. No, and I was always the coach of how I was taught was, when your team at the younger levels, when they're on the power, or like you're on the penalty kill, again, what are the parents going to be doing? They're going to be yelling, ice it, dump it, whatever. And that's what they saw on TV. Going back to that kind of, we keep circling around what they saw on TV, but it's again, I've said it before, I would send emails to the team, to the parents saying, look, I'm trying to teach the kids to get their heads up in situations. If all we ever did was every time we got the puck in our own zone and the penalty kill is if we just iced it, we would never score any shorthanded points. Like, we need to teach them when to ice it, when not to. Well, it was great because USA Hockey then came in and took that out of my hands at those ages where I could say, hey, you know what, unless we're really, 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 really getting killed and like we're, you need to get that out, fine. Okay. But, outside of that, it's an automatic icing, pucks back in our own zone. So, I was grateful for that. But I'm not grateful for it at the 16U level when, especially the kids might go after the game and go play for their high school where they're running a power, they got a set power play breakout. And so I think that was one thing that Dave brought up that I agreed with to a certain extent, but I disagreed to another because, let's not, unless it's actually going to be beneficial for those players that are at that age where we're still developing them. And I'm not saying we're not at the midget age, but we have to be realistic and say, look, these kids got 4 more years of hockey left. Most of them, again, 98%, if you want to call it that. They've got a little bit of hockey left in them. Let's give them that experience of what it really is, what they've been playing, like what you and I had again. So, that's the only one thing that, and I would love to have Dave back on and definitely discuss
Absolutely.
that and see what he's got, because I'm sure he's got some rules and ideas. And honestly, my uncle and I, we go back and forth about, how can the NHL implement more scoring? Well, right now they don't need to, I don't think, at this point, because when you got McDavid putting up 152 points, that's not a big deal. But,
And you have a Devils playoff game that was 8-4.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, so, but one of the things we talked about was, maybe at the NHL level, they need to implement you can't ice the puck on the penalty kill. Why are, and again, it makes sense. Why are we rewarding teams for committing a penalty? That's literally what you're doing is saying, okay, you're losing the guy, but we're going to let you dump the puck. Well, and it's not going to be an icing. I mean, why? So again, I get it. Different ideas, but I think at the youth age, I don't think this rule has panned out. I'm hoping to see it taken out.
Yeah.
At least at this age level, especially to make it fair across the board. Because when you got high school and AA kids the same age, in one league you can, one league you can't, and it says explicitly in the USA Hockey rule, the bylaws, whatever you want to call them, hey, this is what you can and can't do. Okay, in this league you can, but this league you can't. It's silly. So that's my soapbox. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. But anything you wanna add or say, Coach, before we sign off for episode 15?
No, I just want to say I think this is one of our strongest episodes. We certainly had a great guest. A big shout out to Dave Starman. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. We hope to have you again in the future. Maybe jump on for a different topic, but certainly you knocked it out of the park with our ADM discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Coach Dave. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Again, if you can subscribe, any type of feedback you can provide for us, it would be greatly appreciated. And actually, Coach, I do have one other you gave me congratulations, but we've got our own congratulations. And I know it might not seem like a lot, but we've surpassed 1,000 listens.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Hey, don't get me wrong. I would love for it to be, 10,000. I know that probably of those 1,000, probably 100 each split between us is no. But seriously, hey, for all things considered,
my big question is, what are those other people doing with their time? Right?
Right.
We're producing good content here. Get on board, folks.
Yeah, again, share, everything, smash that subscribe button, whatever it is. But for all of you who have been listening and loyal listeners, we do appreciate it. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's been fun, and we hope we've helped everybody, at least in some capacity. So, I'm Trevor DiCarlo.
I'm Andrew Trimble.
And, thanks for everybody for listening to episode 15. We'll see you